Welcome to Heart with Michael, featuring your host, Michael Lieben. Our program is designed to empower the bereaved community with information and stories from those who have suffered the most terrible loss. Michael himself, a bereaved father, will be meeting with people from around the world to share and to draw hope from their experiences. And now, here is Michael Lieben.
Welcome to the 12th episode of the first season of Heart to Heart with Michael, a program for the bereaved community. Our purpose is to empower our community with resources, support, and advocacy information. Today's show is how to be supportive of someone who has lost a child. And here with us to discuss this topic is Kristine Brite McCormick. Kristine is mom to Cora, who passed away at 5 days old of an undetected congenital heart defect. Since Cora's death, Kristine has advocated for newborn heart defect screening and written about her grief journey in blogs. Cora's story has been shared in a variety of platforms, from federal advisory committees to popular parenting sites. She wrote the ebooklet, When Your Friend's Baby Dies, as a resource for friends and family supporting a parent after the loss of a baby. She lives in Indiana with her husband and 3 dogs. Welcome, Kristine.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us about Cora and why you decided to write a book to help others after your loss.
Cora, she was perfect. She lived for 5 days, so I think you just have to start there. She'll always be remembered as this perfect little baby, And I'll start kind of with my pregnancy, because that's more where her story starts. Found out I was pregnant. Everything went great. Ultrasound was fine. She was born. She was almost just shy of 9 pounds and just looked healthy as can be. No problems, nothing came up. We took her home, and the third day we had her home, when she was 5, going on 6 days old, she died suddenly when I was feeding her, rushed her to the hospital.
No warning? Nothing?
No, nothing. I mean, I just looked down, and my baby was covered in blood and wasn't breathing and was gray and limp, so I shouted and my husband to call the ambulance, and we lived in a small town about 2 miles from the hospital, probably, not even. So we just hopped in the car. It was winter, so my husband actually drove with his head out the window because the windows were all frosted over, and just sped to the hospital. And we had no idea at this point. He was up with me, and so he saw what had happened. And then she didn't make it. And a few days later, the coroner called us with the preliminary results that she had something called a congenital heart defect. And even though I'm an educated person, I'd never heard of that. But I just opened the dictionary and was like, well, congenital, born with. So she had a heart defect she was, born with, and tried to piece it together from there. We got the final autopsy a little bit later. And by that time, we'd connected with some other people in this congenital heart defect world and learned a little bit more. And I kind of just dove in, too, because I was just so blindsided. And I think anybody who gets the diagnosis at some time has some form of being blindsided. It wasn't unique. It was just different for me and our experience and our story.
I can tell you that, I think as far as I know from everybody else in the congenital heart defect world, the first thing we did was we hit the books. By the time my daughter was born, it was Google was in its infancy, but everybody hit Google or the books, did exactly the same thing you did. And we were all sort of thrust into this whole new planet that we had no idea anything about.
Right. And even after your child dies, you still want to parent them. I mean, me knowing about CHD did nothing for at that point, but I might have done something for another baby, another family. And that was the only way that I really could still parent her and be a parent and be connected to her. And that was kind of where a lot of my advocacy journey started.
Tell me a little bit about the nature of the book, how you wrote it and who it's for. How did you distribute it?
It was a smaller project of mine, but it's really been found helpful by certain groups of people. I felt unsupported. And again, going back to just wanting to help other people with what I learned, and being a writer, I just really pounded it out pretty fast. I was staying with my husband's grandma, and there was in Florida, and just all alone, and just had time to just write. And I wanted to finish a project in that time, so I decided just a short ebooklet format was the best, because when somebody's lost a child, a lot of time you need information fast and quick, and you don't have time to read a novel. So I just wanted something that they could digest quickly. And after I wrote it, I put it on Amazon, and as much as I can, I put it on for free because it definitely wasn't a get-rich quick scheme to write the book, and that's a great way to spread the word and to get it out there more. And then I've given people in different support groups permission to print it out as a whole. I don't mind. You can email me for the PDF version because it's a little easier to do it that way. So right now it's available on Kindle. It's not a real hard copy in any format. It's just like an e-copy, but you could print it off on PDF.
As a guest on Heart to Heart with Anna, you talked about working with a senator to help pass Cora's Law. What is Cora's Law for those of us who really don't know, and what was it like working with a lawmaker to help other families like your own?
Right. So a few months after Cora passed away, or maybe even within weeks, because your first question is, well, what could have prevented this? I mean, this had to have been preventable some way. I learned about a really simple screening called pulse oximetry screening, which most of your listeners, if you're in the CHD community, you're going to know what those are all about. At the time, the advocacy for that type of screening was kind of in its infancy, but there were a lot of people doing a lot of really great work, and it was really ramping up. And I connected with some of those other parents in other states and doctors and advocates who were on this journey. And it had gone in front of a federal advisory committee for inclusion in the newborn screening panel. And it hadn't been approved yet, but we had a good amount of data about this. So I wrote one of the researchers in England and really got into the nuts and the bolts to make sure that this was something that was working. And it was. I mean, of course, as we all know now, it doesn't find every CHD, but it's kind of, I always think of screening and detection as like a prong. There's pulse oximetry screening, there's signs and symptoms, there's, of course, ultrasound, and then nurses at the bedside, doing some of the listening to the heart and things like that. So I found out this could close a gap, an important diagnostic gap of babies, possibly like Cora. Going back, you'll never know for sure that it could have found her CHD. We can't go back in time and know that for sure. So taking all that data, I first wrote to my state senator, and it was really a long letter, and then all of the data attached that, hey, I think we need to do this, and the only way hospitals are going to start doing it, and that Indiana is going to be on the forefront, is if we pass it into law, which, is just one of the advocacy routes that you can take, but it just felt like the right thing to do at that time. No state had a law. I felt like somebody had to lead the way. And at the same time, there were advocates working in other states, so that the year Indiana passed their law, New Jersey passed their law, and it actually went into effect first. So they started screening first.
I want to be clear on this. What kind of screening are they doing? Because after my daughter was born, they said, if you have more children, we'll screen more. In other words, until you have a child with a CHD, they don't screen because they say it's expensive and there's no real reason to. And in fact, with the regular screening, with the regular checkups that she had, they saw the heart, they heard the heart, but it wasn't a cardiologist who was doing it. It was an OBGYN, and he saw 4 chambers and beating and said, Mazel tov, everything's fine.
Pulse oximetry screening is done at the bedside in the hospital around 24 hours of birth on the newborn. And it costs just a few dollars. It's not expensive, and just a few minutes of the nurse's time. And they put the pulse ox on and it's been a while, because that's the other thing. I've kind of stepped back from advocacy. They put it on a foot and a hand, and because the difference between the two can mean something. And then, of course, if it's under 95, hey, that's a red flag. If it's under 93, it's whoa, red flag. And then it's a screening, so it doesn't tell you anything. That doesn't tell you your child has a CHD. That's no screening really tells you you've got anything. Then you'd want more tests.
I want to cut in here also, because in the case of my daughter, she had too much blood running through the pulmonary artery into her lungs, and she was actually 100, and they wanted to get her down before they would do anything later, but they already discovered her CHD through other means. So if she had done only this test, they would have passed her.
And that's why we call it a screening, because it's just one of the prongs that I talked about earlier. And in fact, it's has 7 main targets, so 7 types. So it sounds like your daughter's CHD wasn't one of the targets. It doesn't find everyone. It depends on the mechanism of the heart and the defect. But it closes that diagnostic gap like I talked about. That brings up another point, because I don't want any parent to think, oh, my baby got this screening. She's good. She turns blue a little bit. I'm not going to even think about her heart. No. Like the
Okay.
signs and symptoms need to be reported.
I'm sorry, but we're going to have to take a hard break here.
Okay.
But when we get back, we'll be talking more about how friends can help their bereaved friends during the holidays.
Hi, I'm John Montez of NBC's hit acapella show, The Sing-Off. In acapella music, it takes a team to create a sound that many will enjoy, just like it'll take a team to help my good friend Miles Schweitzer, an HLHS survivor. Let's help Miles fulfill his dream and make a big enough sound to bring awareness to congenital heart disease. Please visit him at gofundme.com/The Miles Project. Miles with the Y. Again, that's gofundme.com/The Miles Project. This is for Miles.
You are listening to Heart to Heart with Michael. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our program, please send an email to Michael Lieben at michael@hearttoheartwithmichael.com. Now, back to Heart with Michael.
Welcome back to Heart with Michael. Today we're talking with Kristine McCormick about how to help a friend after his or her baby has died. Before the break, we were talking about Cora's Law and how you've written a book to help others who have lost a child. Let's start the segment by talking about what the holidays are like for you.
The holidays can be really up and down for me. Some years I am all about it. Let's join in. Let's put up the Christmas tree. And some years I just kind of skip it. But my one thing that I would share from my experience is just to do you, just to do what feels right that year. If you're sad, it's fine. Just be sad. If you want to get into it, one of the best Christmases I have ever had in my entire life was that Christmas that was like 3 weeks after she died, because it was one of the first times that I felt like it was okay to be happy. You know, it was like okay to come out. Everybody, and of course, everybody was super nice to me, you know, at the time. Nobody's going to bicker over me with the last piece of pie. No, I can't. No. But, you know, everybody was just kind of in a mood of like, let's not take this for granted. Let's not fight about stupid stuff. Let's just laugh and have fun. And because everybody was so worried about me for that Christmas, you know, friends, family, acquaintances. Oh, the holidays are going to be so hard for her. That first holiday was great. All the rest of them, a lot of times, have just been awful, just really hard. And that brings me to a point about people's misconceptions about grief. And people are there for you, you know, the first couple of months, but then years later, they kind of think, she should be over it, or let's not bring this up. So she doesn't think about it when, as you know, and anybody who's lost a child knows, you're always thinking about it. And it just becomes harder when dealing with other people, I think, in a lot of ways.
What do you think it is that the holidays are special in that way, that people are extra sensitive?
I think it's just because you have so many memory-making moments of that day where they're supposed to be there. They should be there, could be there. And you think of what I think of what could be or what should be.
You were talking about friends and family being nice to you. It's difficult to know how to help a friend that's lost a child.
Sure.
So what are some of the things that your friends and family did that were helpful, and what wasn't so helpful? Because there's a lot of meat in that.
Right. There is, and I've learned to kind of step back and be a little bit nicer, to give them a little more leeway, like knowing that it was really hard, but knowing that I needed a lot more at times too. And I think the best thing that you can do is just kind of listen and acknowledge. I mean, because it's just this big elephant in the room a lot of times. And just when you kind of stop and have a moment with me when you say, you know, I know it must be hard today. And, you know, the first year they did that, maybe the second year a little bit, but after that, there were like kind of less of those just acknowledgments.
So when it's years down the line, and people are sort of holding back because they think that by now you must be over it.
Right.
Do you want them to acknowledge? Do you want them to come in and say, hey, I know this is still a part of you?
I do, absolutely. And I know, and especially in writing my booklet, I was very cognizant of the fact that everyone's a little different. And, you know, that doesn't change just because you lost a child. We're not going to all react the same. But, and a lot of times I don't need to talk about it for 10 minutes. I just want, you know, a second, or just like to give me a little bit of breathing space, or just to say, hey, I understand if you're like a little more flaky this week because it's a hard week for you. That's cool. Don't worry. I'm not going to get upset with you, you know?
Well, it's the holidays. You shouldn't get upset with anybody anyway, but I certainly get it. You would hope. I know, but there's always the crazy uncle and all of that, but we're not going to go there. But I certainly understand that when, you know, moments when the families and friends are more crowded together in a friendly family sort of way, there's that moment where somebody says, well, you know, I really wish, you know, she were here. And that's the moment when you that's the test. If you get through that moment, you're good for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm just because the type of person I am, like if that was in front of the whole family, then I would be kind of like, oh, just let me grin and bear this. But I like it when people kind of pull me to the side, just have a little moment with me one on one, and then that helps me get through it.
Would you recommend that to other people? I mean, do you give that advice? Go take your friend aside and say something nice. That's part of it.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And along with, it depends how your friend is. I mean, some people like to be, are more outgoing than me and like to be part of the crowd. I'm an introvert. So, your friend, if they're an extrovert. And
I would never know that you were an introvert. I'm sorry. I just would never know that.
I can play an extrovert when I have to, but I'm very introverted.
Well, you're doing a good job now. So
let
me, in that same vein of being extroverted, what helps you find joy during the holiday season? How do you get to joy?
Personally, for me, and not everybody is lucky to have this, I have a niece and a nephew. I have a few nieces and nephews, and that is my joy. That is my world. And I'm sure other people can relate to that if you have more children. I'm sure that gets them through. And all the first with them and the spoiling of them all season long. It's just amazing. That's my new joy.
That's very nice. Is there something else? Do you have some private time? Do you just keep the close family together? Do you go out?
We do it different every year, and sometimes it's like how I feel. Like Thanksgiving's 2 days away, right? And my plans aren't even that solid. I told my mom I'd be with her this year, so I might drive up there alone, not even with my husband, and cook a turkey. Since we're moving, we just try to fly by the seat of our pants so we can see our kind of mood. And if Kristine needs to hide from the world and read some books and watch some bad TV instead, on Christmas, then people understand. And if they don't, at this rate, 8 years later, I don't really care if they don't understand.
Well, you'd think by now your friends know who you are and know what you value and know how to read you. If this is not a year to have a party or this is a year, you would think that they would know that by now. I think you're lucky that you're surrounded, apparently, by friends and family who really want to try to understand.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I've cut the list. It's pretty small, now. So it's just the few people, the friends and family who I trust to know me well enough that I kind of have really let in besides the acquaintance level, and who I can play the extrovert with the acquaintances. But when I really need to crawl into my shell and be me, then it's just the few amount of people who I trust that I keep around now.
We have about a half a minute, so tell me something not helpful that somebody has said to you.
I don't know where to start. I think everybody has
you got about 20
list.
seconds.
Sorry, when are you going to have more kids?
Oh, that's great.
She's with God now. Okay, great. But I'm not Christian, and that's kind of spooky. The list is endless.
Well, my two favorite ones are, so do you have any more children? Yeah, because that really makes up for it.
Right, that matters.
And my wife's former best friend is, if I had a kid like yours, I'd kill myself.
No, MG.
Yeah. Right, exactly. But guess what? With that, we're going to move to a hard break. So I'm going to say thank you so much for being with us and opening up and sharing your personal journey and how you're channeling your pain into helping others through your book, Cora's Law. But when we come back, we'll get some advice from Kristine about specific ways to help friends who have lost a child and what results she has seen personally since Cora's Law was established.
Tonight Forever by the Baby Blue Sound Collective. I think what I love so much about this CD is that some of the songs were inspired by the patients.
Many listeners will understand many of the different songs and what they've been inspired by. Our new album will be available on iTunes, Amazon.com, Spotify.
I love the fact that the proceeds from this CD are actually going to help those with congenital heart defects.
Enjoy the music.
Home Tonight Forever.
Heart to Heart with Michael is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a non-profit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to uplift, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at www.congenital-heart-defects.com for information about CHD, the hospitals that treat children with CHD, summer camps for CHD survivors, and much, much more.
Did you know that most men suffer from beard itch, ingrown hairs, and a dry face, all because they're not using the right shaving tools? At woodrazor.com, we sell handmade heirloom quality badger hair brushes that exfoliate the skin, open the pores, and stimulate hair follicles, which gives a gentleman a closer, more comfortable shave and a clean face. Visit our website, woodrazor.com, where you can learn more about men's skincare and check out our professional shaving tools. A perfect gift for your man, built to last for generations. That's woodrazor.com.
You are listening to Heart to Heart with Michael. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on Michael's program, please email him at michael@hearttoheartwithmichael.com. Now, back to our program.
Welcome back to Heart with Michael, a program for the bereaved. We're here with Kristine McCormick, who is sharing experiences with us after having lost her daughter Cora to an undiagnosed heart defect. We're about to conclude today's show, and we're going to find out about what Cora's Law has really done in Indiana and some of the 52 ways that we can help friends who have lost a child. So we talked about Cora's Law a little bit in segment 1. Can you tell us how Cora's Law has affected people in Indiana?
I got an email from the Senator Waltz that I worked with, that 100 babies had been detected through the screening. And that was a few years ago. That was just within the first few years. It just blows my mind. And again, that was just in Indiana within the first few years.
Do you feel like you're a mother to all those 100 babies that have been saved?
I do a little bit. And I'm in contact with some of them on Facebook and watching them grow up. And I've held one of them and met one of the families, which was very emotional. And it was the first baby saved. And it was just a really emotional story because the baby lived in the middle of nowhere, the nearest hospital far away. And it would have been a bad outcome had the baby not been sent to a cardiologist so soon.
I just think that's tremendous. Imagine that times 50 for the rest of the country. Have you got some basic stats on how many other states have adopted this law?
We're at almost all the states either have a law or all their hospitals are screening through some regulatory mechanism. I think there's just a few states that are kind of lagging behind, but most of their hospitals are screening. So, there's some more issues to tackle, but we're getting there.
That's amazing, and it gives a lot of hope, I think, because a lot of people don't think about congenital heart defects until they run into it.
Right.
But they think about all kinds of other things that could go wrong. It's just not on their radar. And this will put it there. And I think the more they're aware of it, the more they're going to demand screening if they don't have it. I just think, in general, raising awareness here is automatically going to save lives. And that's terrific. In your book, you mentioned 52 ways people can help friends who have lost a child. Let's talk about 3 things that you think are the most helpful for friends. Only 3, because we only get 30 minutes. So, things that friends can do to help their bereaved friends, especially during the holidays, because we're on it right now. But not just the holidays. Any 3 things that are really good, because I've run into this all the time.
Right. And there are so many ways that you don't think of what you're like, what can we do? I've had friends who lost a baby after me, and I've had moments of what do I do? Because it's just such a horrible situation. And the 52 number was completely arbitrary. I remember sitting in front of my keyboard and just pounding it out like, there are things you can do. And I think the first one is not to run away, because people just tend to hide. I had a friend who didn't contact me for 6 months, and then when she did, or actually I think we kind of ran into each other when we met back up, she said, I didn't know what to say. So you said nothing for 6 months, and not to call her out because we're not friends now, so she won't listen to this, so we're fine. But say something, do something, be there. That's number 1. Number 2 is, and this goes with number 1, is to spend more time listening. I had people coming to me with problems about my daughter's death, or how they were so sad. And that you need to go that the other way. Only comfort the people most affected by a situation. In this case, it would be like me and my husband. And then there's the next level. People shouldn't have come to my mom, who were from the outside of that. And to think about it as rings of people, and to only give comfort in, and to dump all the problems out.
That's interesting, because a lot of people come to me. We also were lucky enough that we were able to donate organs, and I spoke with one of the recipients. She was 66 years old or 67 years old when she got 2 lungs, and about a year later she called me up, and I didn't know who she was, and then I realized who she was in the conversation, that every word that she was saying originated in my daughter's lungs, which was a very powerful moment. But she came to dump because she felt horrible. that she was alive because of our tragedy, and she needed me to tell her it's okay. She said all the social workers said it was okay, and my rabbi said it was okay, and my family said it was okay, but I needed you to tell me it's okay.
Your blessing. Wow. And I mean, that's a powerful situation. One of the few where I can think of where she really needed you. But I mean, some of the mundane things people would come to me about, I'd just be like, I don't have time for that. Nobody got time for that. That's nice one of the few, like, kind of, you can break every rule and there's exceptions to every rule. And that might be one of them. That's just a powerful moment.
That's two things. We need one more thing to make three. What can you do for a friend?
Remember, don't forget, even years later, it's been 8 years for me, and I'll always remember. And if you'll always remember her, she'll never die. For a lot of parents, they love it when you say their child's name, and bring them into the present.
That's true.
And don't forget ever. And I don't think anybody could ever forget Cora or your child either. But just remember them.
Well, here's our final and most difficult question. If you could go back in time and talk to yourself right after you lost Cora, what would you tell yourself?
It's going to be hard. It's going to be so hard in ways you never, ever, ever imagined, but you're going to make it. You're going to make it. And I know that's so simple, but I think there are days when I needed to know that I was going to come out the other side. So
that's I think really important, because at that moment we spent most of this year talking about the moment of loss, and at that moment you really have nowhere to go.
I collapsed on the floor. I thought I was just gonna lose my mind and go into the psych ward, and I was done. I can't describe it. It's like an indescribable moment, but my mind and brain were just drifting off, and I might have, who knows, I might have ended up locked up in a padded cell. And then I saw my husband, this was at the hospital right in the middle of it, and was like, I gotta come back. I gotta be there for him. And just a kind of a powerful moment. And so I think I definitely needed to hear that over and over. People need to hear.
I'm going to steal another 10 seconds.
Okay.
Tell me about what it's like between you and your husband. I found that when I was up, my wife was down. And when she was down, I was up. And they were always at opposite poles. And that was excellent because one could always catch the other. Did you have that?
Yeah, we've had a lot of good moments and a lot of good moments of support. But one issue we've run into is we grieve differently because people grieve differently. So sometimes we don't always understand. So, but we work through that. And after 8 years, we've gotten a lot better at it. Just time and talking.
I think that's really important. This is the sort of thing that either keeps people together or tears them apart.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we've been lucky to stay together. I think you've been lucky. I think you really have a good handle on this. And the fact that you're able to turn that into helping other people is what makes you special. And I think that's probably one of the things that you do purposefully to remember Cora is to keep her with you as you help other people.
Definitely. Like I said at the beginning, it's my way to continue to parent her, which is all I wanted to do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that concludes this episode of Heart to Heart with Michael. Again, I want to thank Kristine McCormick for sharing with us and hope her story has brought some hope and help to others who are listening. Please join me or the Heart to Heart with Michael team in Pal Talk every week following our program. I'll talk to you soon. Until then, remember, it is okay to breathe.
Thank you again for joining us. We hope you have gained strength from listening to our program. Heart to Heart with Michael can be heard every Thursday at noon Eastern Time. We'll talk again next time when we'll share more stories. If you would like to continue today's discussion, please join us right after the program in the Hug podcast chat room on Pal Talk.
We hope you've enjoyed this first season of Heart to Heart with Michael. Please come back in January when we'll start season 2, and our theme will be a celebration of life, where we'll be featuring some really wonderful guests with some tremendous stories about their loved ones.